One moment. That is all it takes to turn concrete into quicksand. You think you are standing on solid ground until you realize you have been sinking up to your waist. For me, that moment was a Tuesday afternoon at 4:37, stuck solid on the Tobin Bridge, and what I was about to do next would not be forgiveness. My name is Alara. I am 34 years old, and my life was built on data. I analyze patterns. I find discrepancies. I build predictive models for Astra Innovative Solutions, a Boston financial consultancy where nuance is just another variable to be quantified. My job is to see the truth hidden in the noise. That Tuesday, the noise was deafening. The heat was a physical weight, pressing down on the city, turning the air inside my car into a sour, recycled soup. The smell of exhaust and hot tar was thick enough to taste. I was trapped in the 5 o'clock crawl on the bridge, the metal groaning, horns blaring in a pointless, angry chorus. My head throbbed from a tense budget meeting, and all I wanted was to get home, pour a glass of wine, and maybe text Liam. Liam. He was in Chicago. He was the keynote speaker at a mergers and acquisitions conference. He had texted me a picture of his hotel room service that morning. I was proud of him. I missed him. The traffic inched forward, then stopped dead. I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel, glancing idly at the pedestrians moving freely on the sidewalk across the lanes. A man pushing a stroller, a woman beside him. My eyes lost focus, blurring them into the heat haze. Then, my focus snapped back, sharp and brutal. I knew that walk. I knew the way his shoulders settled, the way he tilted his head. It was not a man who looked like Liam. It was Liam. My brain stalled. It tried to compute. Liam. Chicago. The man on the sidewalk. Boston. The variables did not match. He was not wearing the Brooks Brothers suit I had picked out for his conference. He was in dark jeans and a faded green t-shirt, the one I always stole to sleep in. He was pushing a sleek, expensive-looking stroller, and a gray diaper bag was slung casually over his shoulder. And next to him, laughing, was Chloe. Not just any Chloe, my best friend, my next-door neighbor, the woman who held my hand when I cried over a work deadline, the woman who knew every secret, every fear, every hope I had shared over countless bottles of wine. The world outside my windshield went silent. The horns disappeared. The oppressive heat vanished, replaced by an arctic cold that started in my chest and shot straight down my arms. I watched, frozen, as Liam stopped. He leaned in and kissed Chloe. It was not a peck. It was a slow, familiar, intimate kiss. The kind of kiss that says, "We own this." The kind of kiss he had given me just 3 days ago at the airport. Then he turned, leaned down, and pressed a long, tender kiss to the forehead of the baby nestled in the stroller. My hand, slick with a sudden cold sweat, fumbled for my phone. It felt like lifting a 100-pound weight. My arm shook. I raised it, aimed it through the dirty windshield, and tapped the screen. A click, a blurry, distorted, damning photo. I watched them turn, together, as a unit, a family. They walked into a gleaming glass and steel luxury apartment building, one I had never seen before, its entrance manned by a doorman in a crisp uniform. They disappeared inside. A car horn, loud as a gunshot, blasted right behind me. The gap. I had left a 20-foot gap. Traffic was moving. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The engine screamed. I swerved, cutting off a furious taxi driver who laid on his horn and raised his middle finger. I barely registered it. I took the next exit, driving blind, my vision swimming. I wrenched the wheel, pulling into the first available spot on a side street, half blocking a hydrant. I did not care. I jammed the car into park, fumbled for the door handle, and stumbled out onto the pavement, leaning against the hot metal of the car door. I doubled over and vomited. I emptied my stomach onto the cracked sidewalk. Nothing but acidic coffee and bile. I heaved again, and then a third time, my body trying to expel a poison that was not in my stomach. It was in my life. I slumped back into the driver's seat, the door still open, the stench of my own sickness filling the car. The Chicago trip was a lie. The late nights at the office, the client dinners, the exhaustion, lies, Chloe, my friendship, our bond. A lie. My entire, carefully analyzed, perfectly curated life was not just a lie. It was a performance, a complete and total fabrication, and I had been the only one in the audience who did not know the script. The acrid smell of my own sickness clung to the air, a grotesque counterpoint to the leather and new car scent of my Audi. I sat there, the door still ajar, the city's indifferent traffic rumbling past. My phone was heavy, a slab of cold glass in my shaking hand. On the screen was the picture, a blurry, distorted image of a life I never knew existed. My mind, the analytical engine I stake my career on, refused to process the present. So it fled to the past. It started playing the highlight reel of the last 7 years, a curated slideshow of a life I thought was mine. I saw Liam at the Astra Winter Benefit, the night we met. He was charming, a consultant from a partner firm, and he talked about his passion for sailing, not his portfolio. He had a smile that crinkled at the edges, a way of listening that made you feel like the only person in a crowded room. He was a perfect gentleman. I saw our apartment, the one overlooking the harbor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the sunrise. It was a monument to our success, all cool blues and polished steel. I saw us on the deck of a rented boat in Nantucket, champagne glasses raised, the wind in my hair. I saw us hosting dinner parties, Liam effortlessly refilling glasses, his laughter the soundtrack to our perfect, upwardly mobile life. I saw my office at Astra Innovative Solutions. I saw Marcus Harding, my boss, a man of considerable power, with a gray-streaked mane and a reputation for being ruthless in business but fiercely protective of his own. He treated me like a prized protege. "You've got the sharpest mind in the firm, Ilara," he would boom, clapping me on the shoulder. "Just follow my lead and you'll go to the top." I felt secure, valued, and I saw Chloe, with her bright yoga leggings and calming voice, the freelance instructor I met at the gym. She became my confidant. I complained to her about the pressure at Astra, about the long hours Marcus demanded. She always listened, always had a cup of herbal tea ready, always told me to honor my feelings. She was the sister I never had. The slideshow flickered, and the images grew darker. 5 years ago, my father. The call came on a Sunday. A tragic kayaking accident. My father, who had practically grown up on the water, who taught me how to read the tides, was gone. The police report said he was caught in a current, his kayak capsized. It never made sense. But grief. I learned. Swallows all doubt. I saw my brother, Julian, the family's black sheep, always chasing a new, failed scheme. He showed up at the funeral, eyes red-rimmed and furious, smelling of stale whiskey. He grabbed my arm, his grip desperate. "It wasn't an accident, Ilara," he hissed, his voice raw. "He was looking into something, some financial deal. They killed him." I recoiled, disgusted. I called him paranoid, cruel. I accused him of using our father's death to feed his delusions. I had him removed. I had not spoken to him since. And who was there, holding my hand as I watched my brother storm away Chloe? She had just happened to find a new apartment in my building, right next door, a few weeks after the funeral. What a coincidence. She was the one who packed up my father's study. She was the one who encouraged me to see Julian's accusations as a symptom of his instability. She was the one who held me as I cried, anointing my grief, as she called it. The warmth of those memories, the remembered comfort of her embrace, evaporated. It left a chilling void. Chloe had been there all along. She had listened to me grieve for my father. She had listened to me complain about my job. She had listened to every secret, every doubt. And Liam. He had held me too. He had been my rock. I looked down at the blurry photo. Liam, Chloe, a baby, a family. The kiss I saw on the bridge was not a moment of passion. It was a moment of routine. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This was not a simple, messy affair. This was organized. This was systematic. My father's accident, my brother's banishment, my demanding, high-stakes job, my supportive best friend, my perfect, loving husband. They were not separate files. They were all part of the same corrupt database. And I, the data analyst, had been the one person too blind to see the pattern. My hand was steady on the steering wheel. This was the strangest part. My stomach had emptied itself. My heart felt like a cold stone, but my hands were steady. I did not drive home to the apartment overlooking the harbor. I did not drive to my office. I drove inland, away from the water, away from the life I knew. I found a motel off the highway, a place with a flickering neon sign and a sign that advertised hourly rates. It was perfect. I paid for 2 nights, in cash. I pulled the bills from my emergency stash, the $500 I kept in the car's glove box. The man behind the plexiglass screen barely looked at me, just slid a key attached to a plastic fob across the counter. The room smelled of bleach and old cigarettes. I locked the deadbolt in the chain. The room was a box, a holding cell. It was exactly what I needed. I sat on the edge of the stiff polyester comforter and took a deep, steadying breath. Then I dialed Liam. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hey, you." His voice was warm, but thin, sleepy. "Hey," I said, my own voice cool, professional, the voice I used for difficult clients. "Listen, I am not going to make it home tonight. A server just crashed, and we have a massive deadline. It is all hands on deck." A sigh, perfectly performed. "Ilara, baby, it is almost 8 o'clock. You have to stop letting them work you like that." "I know," I said, "but this is a big one. I will probably just crash on the sofa in my office." "Okay," he said, his voice thick with fake sympathy. "Okay, get some rest if you can. Good luck, sweetheart. I love you." "Me too," I said, and I hung up. He did not say he was in Chicago. He did not have to. The lie was so practiced. He let me fill in the blanks myself. I opened my laptop, my personal one, not the one from Astra. The motel's Wi-Fi was slow, but it did not matter. I was not a surface-level user. I was an analyst. I dig. I started with Chloe. I had her birthday, her phone number, her email. I ran them through every public record database I had access to. The woman I knew as Chloe, the yoga instructor, did not exist. Her social media was a perfect, curated performance of yoga poses and green smoothies, but her employment history, blank. Her credit history. A thin file opened exactly 2 years ago, just before she happened to meet me at the gym. She was a ghost, a shell, a character created for an audience of one. Me. This was beyond my skill set. I needed a professional. I used a secure browser to access my private savings account, the one my father made me open when I got my first job. "You always need a walkaway fund. Ilara," he had said, "money no man knows about." I had almost $30,000 in it. I transferred $10,000 to a new, encrypted account and found a website for one of Boston's most discreet private investigators. I filled out the intake form. I needed surveillance, a background check, and financial records. The subject Liam, the subject Chloe. The retainer hit their account 10 minutes later. The first report came back in less than 12 hours. The PI was good. He confirmed the address of the luxury apartment building. Liam's name was not on the lease. Chloe's was. The lease was signed 18 months ago. 18 months. He confirmed the utility bills, the parking registration. He confirmed the baby. A boy. He pulled the birth announcement from a local hospital, forwarded to friends and family. A list of names I did not recognize. The baby was 1 year old. My mind did the math. 18 months. 1 year. She had gotten pregnant 3 months after they set up their secret life. He was living with her, raising a child with her, while he was coming home to me and complaining about his flight delays. I was staring at the water-stained ceiling when my phone buzzed with a new email from the PI. Subject update. The body of the email was simple. Got a hit on the surveillance. You need to see this. Attached was a photograph. It was not blurry. It was crystal clear, taken with a long lens. It was Liam and Chloe, sitting at an outdoor table at a high-end restaurant, laughing. But they were not alone. Sitting across from them, raising a glass of wine and a toast, was my boss, Marcus Harding. My blood ran cold. The date stamp on the photo was 2 weeks ago. The night Marcus had urgently sent me to check on the servers in the suburban office. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I logged into our joint bank account. I built a quick script to analyze the transactions, the flow of money. I knew Liam's spending habits. Or I thought I did. This was different. A systematic siphoning. Small transfers at first, then larger ones, coded as consulting fees, investment services, all going to an offshore account I did not recognize. The total amount transferred out over the last 6 months, just under $300,000. My $300,000. It was my bonus from last year, the one Marcus had personally signed off on. This was not an affair. This was not a betrayal. This was an extraction, a planned, coordinated financial demolition. I closed the laptop. My brother's voice, the one I had banished and ignored, echoed in the silent, cheap room. They will not stop at Dad. They will take everything. They were. And they were using me to help them. I did not sleep in the motel. I sat in the hard-backed chair, watching the sun's first gray light filter through the dirty window, and I planned. The rage and the grief had burned away, leaving something pure and cold. It was the same methodical focus I applied to a complex data set, a problem to be solved. At 9:30 in the morning, I stood in the lobby of the glass and steel building. It was all marble and hushed, expensive air. The doorman, in his crisp uniform, looked at me with polite disinterest. "I'm here to see Chloe," I said, giving her last name. "She's expecting me for a private yoga session. The name is Sarah." He checked his tablet, nodded, and buzzed me through. "Apartment 2804? Of course. The penthouse floor." The elevator ride was silent, a smooth, fast ascent. The hallway was carpeted in thick gray wool. The air scented with something that smelled like sandalwood and money. I found the door, a solid slab of dark wood. I did not hesitate. I did not feel my heart race. I felt nothing. I knocked. I heard the faint sound of a baby's coo, then footsteps. The door opened. Chloe stood there. She was wearing soft-looking linen pants and a white tank top, her blonde hair piled in a messy, effortless bun. She was holding the baby, a little boy with Liam's dark hair, on her hip. Her face, so familiar, so full of false sympathy for so many years, went through 3 distinct phases in less than 2 seconds. First, confusion. Second, a sharp intake of breath, a flicker of pure panic. And finally, as she looked into my cold, still eyes, a weary, almost bored resignation. She knew the performance was over. "He's in the bedroom," she said, her voice flat, as if I were a delivery driver, as if summoned. Liam appeared in the archway behind her. He was naked. He was not scrambling to cover himself. He was not ashamed. He stood there, casual and exposed, toweling his hair dry. He saw me. He did not flinch. He just stopped drying his hair. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not ask why. I simply lifted my phone from my pocket. I had the picture from the PI open on the screen, the crystal-clear image of the 3 of them, Liam, Chloe, and Marcus Harding, raising their glasses in a toast. I held it up for them to see. Liam looked at the phone, then at my face. He let out a long, slow sigh. It was the sound of an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. "So you know," he said, his voice matter of fact. "It ended sooner than I thought." He had no apology. He had no excuse. Just an observation on a timeline. Chloe adjusted the baby on her hip. "He never loved you, Ilara," she said, her voice laced with a cold pity that was more insulting than any shout. "You were just a door, a way in." I looked at the baby. He gurgled, reaching a tiny hand toward his mother's face. I looked at Liam, the man I had slept next to for 7 years. I looked at Chloe, the woman who had held me while I mourned my father. I lowered the phone, put it back in my pocket, and turned around. I walked away. I did not run. I did not slam the door. As I walked to the elevator, I heard their voices, low and murmuring. They were not arguing. They were just continuing their day. I was a disruption that had been handled. The next morning, I dressed in my best suit. I walked into the lobby of Astra Innovative Solutions at 8:55. I walked to the security turnstile and held my access card against the reader. Nothing. I tried again. A small, solid red light. Access denied. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert. Meeting Marcus Harding. Office. Now. Harding's executive assistant, a woman I had known for years, met me at the elevator. She would not make eye contact. "He's waiting," was all she said. I was escorted, not as a valued employee, but as a problem. His office was on the top floor, a corner suite that looked out over the entire city. He was standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Ilara," he said, turning. His voice was a performance of deep, paternal disappointment. "I am profoundly sorry about this." "Sorry about what?" "Marcus. Your employment at Astra is terminated, effective immediately." He gestured to his polished desk. A single folder sat there. "We've discovered a serious breach of company security policy, attempts to access restricted financial files, data that is far outside your clearance. Your network access has been logged. Ilara, it's a massive violation." He was right. In the 2 hours I was at the motel before the confrontation, I had used my Astra credentials to try and find the offshore account. I was sloppy, I was emotional, and they were waiting for it. "I am truly disappointed," he said, shaking his head. "I had such high hopes for you." "Just get it over with," I said. His face hardened, the mask of the concerned mentor dropping away. "You're done." He pressed a button on his intercom. "Security, we're finished here." 2 uniformed guards, men I recognized from the lobby, entered the room. They did not touch me. They just stood, one at the door, one gesturing to the elevator. I was not allowed to go back to my desk. I was not allowed to get my coat, my files, my personal items. I was escorted down the elevator, across the gleaming lobby, and out the revolving glass doors. They did not even let me keep the company phone. I was deposited on the sidewalk, in my best suit, holding nothing but my purse, my entire life, my career, my marriage, my home, all of it, collapsed and erased in less than 24 hours. The collapse was not gradual. It was instantaneous, a building implosion. The first beam to go was the money. I went to a coffee shop the morning after my firing, and my corporate card was declined. I tried my personal debit card. Declined. My joint credit cards. All declined. A cold dread, sharper than the nausea, settled in my stomach. I walked to the nearest ATM, my private savings card in hand. The account was frozen. A curt message on the screen. "Contact financial institution for details." I called the bank. A polite, firm voice informed me that a lien had been placed on my accounts due to pending legal action initiated by my husband. An hour later, my phone buzzed with an email from a law firm I had never heard of. I was being sued for divorce. I opened the PDF. The language was brutal, clinical. Liam was petitioning for an emergency order, claiming I was mentally unstable and a danger to myself and our assets. He was accusing me of erratic behavior and misappropriation of marital funds. He was using my attempt to access the offshore account, the account he was stealing from, as proof that I was the one committing fraud. He had struck first, and he had struck perfectly. The next day, a formal eviction notice was taped to the door of our apartment. Liam, whose name was on the lease, had informed the building management he was terminating it. The rent was unpaid. I had 48 hours to vacate. I tried to call our friends, the people who had drunk our wine and laughed in our home, Sarah from marketing, David and his wife from Liam's firm. Voicemail. Voicemail. A click as soon as I said my name. The entire network, the whole social infrastructure of my life, vanished as if it had never existed. They were not my friends. They were part of the audience, and the show was over. I packed a single suitcase with my most basic clothes, my laptop, and my father's identification. Everything else, the designer clothes, the art, the furniture, the life I left. I had no way to move it, no place to put it. I stood in my bedroom, holding the last thing of value I owned, my father's watch. A simple, elegant timepiece he was given when he made partner, the one he wore kayaking, the one he was wearing when he died. I walked to a pawn shop downtown, a place that smelled of dust and desperation. The man behind the glass barely looked at the inscription. $400, he grunted. It's worth 10 times that, I said, my voice hollow. He shrugged. 400, that's the offer. I slid the watch under the glass. The bills he pushed back were warm and wrinkled. I walked out, feeling like I had just sold a piece of my own body. That $400 got me a room at the Seabreeze Motel in Revere, a miserable concrete box off the highway that smelled of damp, mildew, and stale smoke. The sign outside had a broken neon palm tree. I paid the woman at the counter, day by day, in cash. My days fell into a new, grinding routine. Wake up, use the terrible Wi-Fi to search for jobs, eat nothing. I sent out dozens of applications. Nothing. I finally called a headhunter who had placed me at Astra. Her voice, usually so warm and bubbly, was ice. "Ilara, I can't help you," she said, cutting me off. "What do you mean I'm the best analyst you know?" "Listen to me," she said, her voice dropping. "I shouldn't even be telling you this. Your name is flagged. You're blacklisted. Whatever you did, no one in the financial sector will touch you." She hung up. So that was it. They had taken my husband, my home, my friends, my money, and now, my name, my reputation, my future. That night, I was sitting on the floor of the motel room. The only light came from the broken neon sign outside, pulsing a sick pink glow into the room. I was boiling water in a cheap plastic kettle I'd bought at a thrift store. My dinner was a cup of instant noodles. The hunger was a dull, constant ache. I was invisible. I had been erased. A knock came at the door. It was not a polite knock. It was a sharp, hard rap. 3 times. I froze. No one knew I was here. It came again, harder. I crept to the door, my heart pounding, and looked through the peephole. A man stood in the walkway. I could not make out his features. He was just a shape in the dark. I undid the chain. I opened the door a crack. He was nondescript, in a dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low. He looked like no one. He did not say hello. He pushed a small cardboard box into my hand. "An old friend said you might need this," he said, his voice a low rasp. "And a tip stop using your real name." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the parking lot. I closed the door, my hand shaking, and bolted the lock. I opened the box. Inside was a cheap, plastic-wrapped burner phone and a charger. I stared at it. An old friend. I had no friends. As if on cue. The phone vibrated, and a tinny, jarring ringtone filled the silent room. An unknown number. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. I fumbled to answer it. "Hello." My voice was a croak, a pause, and then a voice I had not heard in 5 years, a voice I had banished. "Alara," said my brother, Julian. "I've been waiting for your call." The phone felt slick and cold in my hand, a cheap piece of plastic that held a ghost. Julian. The name was like ash in my mouth. "I've been waiting for your call," he said again, his voice older, rougher, but unmistakably his. "I figured you'd be at rock bottom by now. That's how they work. You knew this was happening." "I knew something was," he said, his voice hard. "The man who gave you the phone. He's an old contact of Dad's. He's been keeping a loose tail on you, for your own protection. When you went off-grid, he alerted me. We've been watching you at that motel for 3 days, waiting for you to be ready." "Ready for what?" I whispered, staring at the peeling wallpaper. "For the truth," he said. Dad knew this might happen. He knew they wouldn't just stop with him. He prepared. There was a silence. Then he gave me an address. A self-storage facility out in Saugus. One of those massive, anonymous places. "Unit 482, he said. "The code is your childhood zip code. Get there. Now. And Alara, throw your old phone in a storm drain. You are a ghost. Start acting like one." The line went dead. I took the last of my cash and caught a bus, then another, walking the final 2 miles. The storage facility was a sprawling city of corrugated metal doors. I found Unit 482. It was an old-style lock, a simple combination. I spun the numbers. The lock clicked open. The metal door shrieked as I rolled it up. Inside, it was just what you'd expect. Old boxes. A dusty sofa covered in a plastic sheet. A broken lamp. It was my father's junk. Julian was already there, stepping out from the shadows in the back. He looked thin, his eyes haunted, but they burned with a cold fire I had never seen. "You're late," he said. He pointed not at the boxes, but at the back wall of the unit. He was always so much smarter than they were. He pushed the dusty sofa aside and knocked on a panel of the metal wall. It sounded hollow. He found a seam, pushed, and a section of the wall clicked open, revealing a small, dark space. Julian flicked a switch. It was not a closet. It was an office, a small, climate-controlled room, shielded and soundproofed. It was lined with shelves, but instead of books, it held servers, rows of military-grade hard drives, and what looked like old-fashioned paper ledgers. In the center, on a simple metal desk, sat a rugged, dark green laptop. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "This," Julian said, "is Dad's insurance policy. This is his real investigation." He picked up a single sealed envelope from the desk. My name was on it, written in my father's sharp, definitive hand. "He left this for you," Julian said, his voice cracking for the first time. "He said you were the only one smart enough to understand it, and the only one he was afraid for." My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short. "My dearest Alara, if you are reading this, it means I've failed, and my worst fears are realized. I need you to listen, and I need you to believe me, as you should have believed Julian. I was investigating Astra Innovative Solutions. Marcus Harding is not a consultant. He is a predator. He is running a Ponzi scheme, one of the largest in history, built on the stolen retirement funds of over 50,000 people. It's a multi-billion-dollar house of cards. I found the proof. But this is not just about money. They are not simple white-collar criminals. They are ruthless. They will do anything to protect the scheme. And Alara, they came for you. The man you know as Liam. He is not an investment consultant. He is a professional cleaner. His specialty is infiltration and retrieval. Harding hired him to get to me, to find my evidence. When he couldn't, he was given a new target. You. His mission was to get inside my family, to romance you, to marry you, to search your life and our home to find and destroy my work. The woman, Chloe, is not your friend. She is his handler, another operative, placed to ensure his loyalty and to monitor his progress. I was too close. I was going to expose them. They couldn't let that happen. My kayak trip. Alara, there was no accident. It was them. It was Liam. They murdered me to protect their secret. And they put him in your bed to make sure it stayed buried. The letter slipped from my fingers. The air in the small room was cold, but I was colder. The facts aligned in my head, a data set falling into terrible, perfect place. The man I had loved, the man I had shared my body and my grief with, the man who had held me while I cried over my father's death, he was the one who had caused it. I did not cry. I did not scream. The despair of the motel room, the hunger, the fear, it all burned away. I looked at Julian, his face pale and set, waiting. "Ilara," he asked. I bent down and picked up the letter. I folded it. "Show me the hard drives," I said. "Show me everything. I was not a victim anymore. I was not a wife. I was my father's daughter, and I had just been handed a legacy of pure, cold-blooded revenge. We did not speak for a long time. The small, cold room was silent except for the hum of the servers. Julian sat on a metal stool, watching me, giving me space as I processed the letter. Finally, I folded it, my hands steady, and placed it on the metal desk. "You said he prepared?" I said. "This is the preparation." Julian nodded, gesturing to the bank of hard drives. Dad was old school. He kept paper ledgers, but he learned to be a digital ghost. These drives. They're not just backups. They're a mirror. I powered on the rugged laptop. The operating system was a custom version of Linux I did not recognize. The desktop was empty except for a single icon, a small, pixelated image of a kayak. I clicked it. A password prompt appeared, just a black screen with a single question. Where did the fireflies dance? I looked at Julian. A small, sad smile touched his lips. He didn't leave a key. He left a test, to make sure it was us. "The Weeping Willow," I said, my fingers typing the answer. "The Weeping Willow in the backyard." The screen flashed, and a new prompt appeared. "What was the name of the first boat?" "The Ilara's Folly," Julian murmured. I typed. Another prompt, and another. For an hour. We sat there, descending into our shared past, unlocking layer after layer of encryption with the answers to questions only we would know. The name of our childhood dog, the street of our first apartment, the make of our father's first car. It was a digital treasure hunt through our own lives. Finally, the screen flashed green. "Access granted." A file system loaded. It was not just a few files. It was an entire, meticulously organized archive. My analyst's mind took over, the grief replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I saw the structure. "Julian," I said, my voice quiet. He didn't just copy files. He mirrored Harding's entire server, the main server, the offshore backup, the man's personal laptop. It was all there. Decades of corruption, all quantified. I clicked a folder labeled Transactions. Inside were thousands of files, detailing wire transfers to shell corporations in the Cayman Islands, Panama, and Cyprus. I recognized the account numbers from my own brief. Failed investigation. This was the Ponzi scheme. Billions of dollars, not millions, laundered and hidden. I clicked another folder. Audio. Julian and I listened, headphones shared between us. We heard Marcus Harding in his office, his voice booming and confident, making deals, threatening a politician, laughing about a close call with regulators. We heard him talking to Liam, the audio thin as if from a hidden recorder. "She's the key. Son. Get her. You get the family. Get the family. You find the evidence. Just make it believable. She's smart. But she's lonely." My stomach tightened, but I kept my face blank. I was no longer listening as a wife. I was listening as an auditor. Then, Julian pointed to a folder labeled Marina. "Dad had a small camera on his boat dock for security," Julian said, his voice tight. "He was always paranoid about theft." My hand hovered over the file. Julian, play it, he said. The file opened. The timestamp was the morning of my father's death. The angle was wide, showing the dock and the line of kayaks. The video was grainy, low resolution, but clear enough. At 5:13 in the morning, a figure appears. He is wearing dark clothes, a baseball cap pulled low, obscuring his face. But it's not his face I recognize. It's his walk, the easy, athletic way he moves, the set of his shoulders. It was Liam. The figure moves to my father's kayak, the bright red one. He looks around, checks his watch. Then, he pulls a small, battery-powered drill from his pocket. He leans over, and for 30 seconds, the camera records the high-pitched, unmistakable sound of drilling into fiberglass. Just below the waterline, he stops. He pulls something else from his pocket, a small cap. He presses it firmly into the hole. He runs his hand over it, satisfied. Then, he stands up, pulls his cap down further, and walks away. My father's letter said it was a water-soluble plug, designed to hold for an hour or two, long enough for him to get out into the middle of the water, before dissolving and letting the sea pour in. I watched the man I loved, the man I had built a life with, meticulously and efficiently arrange my father's murder. I watched him sentence him to a cold, lonely death, and then walk away as if he were just taking out the trash. I did not make a sound. I just closed the file. He told me, I whispered, my voice a dead thing, that he had a client meeting that morning. He kissed me goodbye. Ilara, Julian said, his hand on my shoulder. No, I said, shrugging him off. I stood up. I needed to move. I paced the small room. He didn't just collect the evidence. What? Dad. He didn't just copy the servers. That's not who he was. He was a financial predator, just like Harding, but with a conscience. I looked at Julian. He didn't just copy the data. He would have attacked. Julian looked confused. Ilara, this is it. This is the whole archive. No, I said, my mind racing. I went back to the laptop, to the main directory. There was one last file, a simple text file named Note. I opened it. It was not a long, sentimental message. It was a final set of instructions. It detailed a bank, a specific branch in Zurich. It detailed an account number, a long string of digits. It was an anonymous escrow account. I moved the first tranche. The note read, their seed money, the offshore reserve they use for operations. It's not all of it, but it's enough to hurt them when the time is right. $25 million. Julian's jaw dropped. I read the last line. The key is biometric. It's keyed to you, Ilara, your eye, your hand. They used you to get to me. Now you use what they gave me to get to them. Take back what they stole, and burn the rest. I closed the laptop. The despair of the motel, the humiliation, the grief, it was all gone. It was fuel. I was not a victim. I was not an analyst. I was an heiress, and I had just inherited a war. We started with the last of my walkaway fund, the $10,000 that was left after the PI and the motel. The first thing I purchased was my own erasure. Ilara, the 34-year-old data analyst, had to die. We went to a cash-only salon in a different town. The woman who ran it asked no questions. Cut it, I said, pointing to my long, dark hair. Short, and make it blonde. Something cheap-looking. She worked for 2 hours. When I looked in the mirror, I did not recognize the woman staring back. Her hair was a brittle, chemical blonde, chopped raggedly to her chin. Her face was gaunt, her eyes cold. She looked like someone who had been through a fire. Julian bought me a new wardrobe at a thrift store. Baggy jeans, hoodies, a worn-out pair of boots. Ilara wore tailored suits and silk blouses. This new woman, Sarah, wore armor. We bought fake IDs with cash from a man Julian knew. They were not perfect, but they were good enough to get us on a plane. We flew from Hartford, not Boston. We flew to Toronto, then to Frankfurt, then finally to Zurich. We paid for everything in cash, slept in airports, and never used a credit card. The bank in Zurich was the opposite of our new lives. It was all old wood, quiet marble, and discreet silence. A severe-looking man in a perfect suit led me into a private vault. He did not ask my name. He only motioned to the biometric scanner. I pressed my hand to the glass plate. A red light scanned my palm. I leaned in, and a blue light scanned my right eye. The man watched his monitor. He nodded. Once. Access granted. Ms. Ilara. He spun a different monitor around. It showed a single number, $25,200,042. What would you like to do with the funds? He asked, his voice smooth. I want $5 million in bearer bonds, immediately, I said. I want the remaining $20 million transferred in $100,000 increments to a new, numbered account, and I want a debit card linked to it that works internationally. He did not even blink. It will be done. An hour later, I walked out with a simple black briefcase and a new bank card. The old Ilara would have been terrified of that much money. The new Ilara saw it as what it was, ammunition. We flew back to the States, not to Boston. We went to Providence, Rhode Island. It was close, but not too close. We rented a large, empty warehouse space in an industrial park, paying a year in cash under a shell LLC Julian created. We slept on cots. We ate takeout. We set up a high-speed, encrypted network and a wall of monitors. The sterile, cold storage unit had been a library. This was a war room. So, Julian said, drinking a beer and looking at the empty screens. Now what? Do we just walk into the FBI? No, I said, pulling my new laptop from its box. The audio files prove Harding has contacts, cops, politicians. He'd hear us coming before we even got through security. The FBI is the last resort, not the first. So what? Then we're just two people. No, I said. Dad's archives didn't just give us money and data. They gave us a list of Harding's enemies. We're not going to use the police. We're going to build our own army. We started with the money. We needed to recruit, and we needed people who were motivated by more than just a paycheck. We needed people who wanted revenge as badly as we did. Our first meeting was with a man named Ben Carter. He was once Boston's top investigative journalist, a Pulitzer nominee. Now he ran a failing conspiracy blog out of his basement. I found his name in Dad's notes. Harding had personally, and falsely, fed a story to Carter's rivals that Carter had fabricated a source. It ruined him. We met him at a diner. He looked terrible. I don't know who you are, he slurred, but I'm not for sale. We're not here to buy you, I said, sliding a single file across the table. We're here to give you the source you've been looking for. This is a recording of Marcus Harding admitting to planting the false story. It's yours. All we want in return is your talent. We'll fund your work, 100%. But you aim your gun where we tell you. He opened the file, his hand shaking. He listened. His eyes, once dull, lit up. What do you need? Our second recruit was a woman known only as Kestrel, a white hat hacker, one of the best. Her name was in a different file, a list of personal favors my father had done. He'd represented her pro bono in a minor case years ago and got it dismissed. We contacted her on a secure channel. Your father was a good man, she messaged back. He kept me out of the system. What do you need from me? We need a ghost in Harding's machine, I typed. We need to plant data, move money, and control their entire network without them ever knowing we're there. That's not a small ask, she wrote. We're paying, I typed. And the target is Marcus Harding. The reply was instant. For you, I'll do it for free, but I'll take the money anyway. Our last piece was the lawyer, Miranda Stone, a shark. She was a corporate litigator who had gone up against Harding's firm in a class action suit 5 years ago. She lost. Badly. Dad's notes suggested Harding had blackmailed the judge. Miranda was disbarred on a technicality and now taught night school law. We met her at her tiny office. I know what you're doing, she said. Before we even sat down, she was sharp. You're the ghost of Alara. I've been following the divorce filing. It's a hatchet job. We have $25 million, Mr. Harding's entire server, and video proof he had my father murdered, I said, cold. We're not here to sue. We're here to dismantle. Miranda smiled. A real smile. It did not reach her eyes. My retainer is $10,000 an hour. You're hired, I said. We all met in the warehouse the next day. The journalist, the hacker, the lawyer, and the 2 orphans. It was a broken, furious, brilliant team. This is Operation Kayak, I said, standing in front of the main monitor, the grainy video of Liam on the dock playing on a loop behind me. Our goal is not justice. The courts are too slow and too clean. Our goal is a reckoning. We're not just going to put them in jail. We are going to burn their reputations, seize their assets, and turn their lives into the same black and gray hell they built for me. We're going to make them as invisible, as poor, and as desperate as they made us. I looked at their faces. They were all in. We did not start in Boston. That was Harding's fortress. We started at the edges, where his influence was thin. Miranda, our lawyer, used our new Swiss account to retain a shell firm in Luxembourg. From there, she anonymously fed a single, clean file from my father's archive to a German financial regulator, a file detailing just one of Harding's undeclared offshore accounts. It was a small poke, a tiny, verifiable discrepancy, just enough to make a bear look over his shoulder. While the regulators in Europe were sharpening their pencils, Kestrel, our hacker, went to work on the home front. She had more than a mirror of Harding's server. My father's archive had given her the back doors. She was not just a ghost in the machine. She was a god. She began to create a new narrative inside Harding's live system, a new, hidden account, a digital trail, one that looked like Liam, the expert cleaner, was getting sloppy, getting greedy. She started siphoning tiny, untraceable amounts from one of Harding's dormant accounts, moving them to a new, encrypted wallet under Liam's digital signature. She was painting a picture, brushstroke by brushstroke, of a trusted lieutenant who had decided to start his own retirement fund. My role was the most repellent. I had to face her. Alara was a ghost, so Sarah was put away. We created Anya, a bored, fabulously wealthy heiress from a vaguely European family. We traded the thrift store clothes for quiet, obscenely expensive luxury. We traded the bleach blonde chop for a sleek auburn wig. My new accent was faint, practiced, and dripping with disdain. Julian, acting as my family office manager, arranged for me to be at a high-end charity auction. The target, Chloe. I found her near the silent auction tables, looking smug. I waited until she had placed a final bid on a ridiculous $10,000 spa weekend. Then, in the last 30 seconds, I walked up and wrote down a bid for $30,000. I found her pouting by the champagne bar later. My apologies, I said, my new voice smooth and low. I truly hope that wasn't for a special occasion. I just get so bored at these things. She looked me up and down, a practiced assessment of my dress, my watch, my shoes. She was calculating my net worth. It was nothing, she said, her voice a little tight. Anya, I said, offering a hand. My family is new to Boston. I hardly know a soul. Please, let me buy you a real drink to make up for it. Chloe, who had been an operator all her life, saw what she thought was a mark, a new, rich friend to add to her collection. We were having lunch within the week. We met twice. The third lunch was the charm, at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the harbor. I had Kestrel on standby. I set my phone on the table. I had Anya's fake banking app open. You know, I said, swirling my wine. It is so exhausting, the men in my life. They are all just leeches. Chloe nodded, her eyes bright. Tell me about it. My last trust manager, I said, sighing. I caught him. Just last month. Skimming, moving small amounts into a private account, thinking I wouldn't notice. He was planning to run, with a new girl half his age. As I said it, Kestrel sent a push notification to my phone. An alert from my bank. I opened it, my face a mask of manufactured fury. "He is doing it again," I hissed, turning the screen to her accidentally. On the screen was a fake interface Kestrel had built, showing a $10,000 transfer to an account labeled Mistress. "This is what they do," I said, snapping the phone shut. "They build a nest, they find a younger, prettier face, and they prepare to abandon you." I watched her. Her face did not change, but she stopped drinking her wine. The seed was planted, a seed of paranoia, identical to the one they had planted in me. Kestrel confirmed it the next morning. From our warehouse, we watched Chloe, using her home computer, logged into Harding's server. She was not just looking, she was downloading, copying files, contracts, bank statements, client lists. "She's building an insurance policy," Kestrel messaged our secure group. She was a handler, after all. She knew how to protect herself. She just never thought she'd have to protect herself from Liam. With Chloe compromised and the European regulators asking quiet questions, it was time for the next domino. Ben Carter, our journalist. He did not publish in Boston. He fed his meticulously sourced, anonymous story to a high-traffic financial blog in New York. The headline was a match in a gas station. "The Boston Shadow Fund is a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme hiding in plain sight." It didn't name Harding. It didn't name Astra. It just described, in perfect, damning detail, the exact nature of the fraud. The investors, the real ones, recognized their portfolios instantly. The panic was immediate. The phones at Astra began to ring, and the first rule of a Ponzi scheme is that it only survives if the money stays in. Harding, now squeezed by regulators and a bank run, had to liquidate assets to pay off the panicked investors. He went to his emergency reserves, and what did he find? He found Kestrel's masterpiece. He found the digital trail of his trusted cleaner, Liam, stealing from him. He panicked. He believed Liam was betraying him. He did the one thing a master criminal should never do. He started moving his own personal money. A massive $50 million transfer from one illegal shell company to another, trying to get it out of Liam's reach. That transfer, combined with the German inquiry, triggered a high-priority, automated alert at the SEC. The alarms were finally, officially, blaring. They were all bleeding. They were all paranoid. It was time to make them turn on each other. I sat in the cold, dark warehouse, illuminated only by the glow of my laptop. I opened a new, encrypted email service. I attached one single small video file, the file from the marina. The one of Liam, drilling a hole in my father's kayak. I sent it to Liam's personal email address. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained a single word, new. Liam, already terrified that Harding had discovered his theft, would not think this came from me. I was a ghost. He would think it was a threat from Harding, a piece of blackmail to keep him in line, or to set him up as the fall guy. Chloe, already convinced Liam was betraying her, would see his panic and run to the first prosecutor she could find, her insurance files in hand. Harding, his money frozen, his company collapsing, would see his top two operatives self-destructing and assume they were the ones who had leaked the story. The wolf pack, starved and cornered, was about to eat itself. The email, the video, the single word, it was the catalyst. It was the match tossed into the gasoline-soaked structure they had built. The collapse was immediate, and it was total. Liam received the email. He did not see a message from a ghost. He saw a threat from a partner. He assumed Harding, feeling the pressure from the SEC, was preparing to cut him loose, using the murder as leverage to frame him for the entire operation. He was a professional cleaner, and he knew when a job was compromised. He panicked. He did not call Chloe. He did not call Harding. He used his emergency go bag and his fake passport and drove straight to Logan Airport, attempting to board a non-extradition flight. But Kestrel was already in the airport's system. An anonymous tip from our team, flagged for terrorism. In short, he was pulled from the line by Homeland Security. He was arrested while trying to explain why his passport was fake. Chloe saw Liam's sudden disappearance. She saw the new, explosive articles from Ben Carter, now naming names, including hers. She saw the world she had built, the penthouse, the money, the status, evaporating. And she remembered my warning, Anya's warning, about men who plan to abandon their women. Believing she had been betrayed and left behind, she did exactly what we predicted. She took her insurance files. She walked into the U.S. Attorney's office demanding full immunity in exchange for her testimony against Harding and Liam. But Miranda Stone had already been there. An anonymous drop, delivered by messenger an hour before Chloe arrived, had provided the prosecutors with a much cleaner, more complete version of the data that irrefutably painted Chloe as a willing co-conspirator. They let her talk for an hour. Then they arrested her. 2. Harding was the last to fall. He was trapped between the European regulators, the SEC, and the massive bank run from his investors. He woke up to find both his cleaner and his cleaner's handler had been arrested. He had no one left to trust. As he sat in his office, the same one where he had dismissed my life, he was frantically trying to move the last of his personal money, but Kestrel was already there, locking him out of his own accounts. The FBI and SEC teams, acting on the combined European investor and SEC alerts, chose that exact moment to raid Astra's offices. They found Harding, a man who once commanded billions, screaming at a computer screen that would no longer obey him. The trial was the climax. It was not a legal proceeding. It was an execution. Harding, Liam, and Chloe, once a team, now sat at the defense table, their lawyers whispering furiously between them, their faces masks of pale hatred. The prosecution had the files. They had the offshore accounts. They had the testimony from Chloe, now flipped into a desperate, failed plea for a lesser sentence. And they had me. I was not Sarah or Anya. I walked into that courtroom as Alara. I was no longer a ghost. I was the star witness. For 2 full days, I sat on the stand. I did not cry. I did not yell. In the calm, precise, analytical voice they had trained me to use, I walked the jury through every single moment. I started with the traffic on the Tobin Bridge. I described the heat, the smell of exhaust, and the gray diaper bag. I described the motel room in Revere. I described the pawn shop and the feeling of sliding my father's watch under the glass. I described the cold storage unit and the ledgers and the audio files. Harding's lawyer tried to paint me as a hysterical, vengeful wife. You were fired for cause, were you not? You were accused of mental instability by your husband. True. Yes, I said. All of which was part of the plan, a plan that was recorded. Then, the prosecutor turned to the murder. Ms. Alara, you maintain that Mr. Liam murdered your father. On what do you base this accusation? I don't have to, I said, looking at the jury. He recorded it. The courtroom lights dimmed. The large screens lit up. The prosecutor played the video from the marina, the grainy footage, the baseball cap, the sound of the drill, a high-pitched, metallic whine that filled the silent room. I did not watch the screen. I had seen it enough. I watched Liam. He sat, frozen, as the video played. He stared at his hands as the sound of the drill reached its peak. A sound, a low, guttural, animal sound, broke from his throat. He slumped forward, his body convulsing, his shoulders heaving. He, the man of perfect control, the ultimate performer, had finally, completely collapsed. The verdicts took less than 3 hours. Marcus Harding, life in prison for masterminding the fraud and for first-degree murder. Liam, 30 years for first-degree murder and conspiracy. Chloe, 15 years for conspiracy and financial fraud. They were taken away. A brutal, clean, perfect balance. The $25 million my father had taken was released to me, classified by the court as restitution. Miranda's civil suits, filed on behalf of the thousands of investors Harding had ruined, recovered hundreds of millions more. Julian and I used that money to build a new kind of archive. We founded the Julian and Alara Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to exposing high-level financial corruption and protecting the whistleblowers who bring it to light. He runs the security. I run the data. We hunt men like Harding. I went back to the Tobin Bridge. It was a Tuesday afternoon, around 4:30. I stood on the walkway, looking down at the exact spot where I had seen him. The traffic was just as bad. A sea of stopped cars, horns blaring, the air thick with exhaust. Everything was trapped. Everything was exactly the same as that day. But I was not. I was standing. I was moving. And I was, for the first time in my life, free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you want to support this channel, hit that hype button so more people can hear this story.